In 1845, a plantation ledger in Baton Rouge recorded the purchase of a young enslaved man as unremarkable. 3 days later, the same ledger was found soaked in blood, and someone had written only 4 words across the page. "He is not a man," and then the boy vanished. No living record gives us his true name, not in census reports, not in church rolls, not in slave registries. The only mark connected to him is the letter E, carved into the inside of a chapel pew abandoned just outside Baton Rouge. It was discovered in 1911 when the building was being torn down. Beneath that letter was another word, not English, not French, something older, almost like a prayer spoken by trembling hands. Local legend says the boy arrived on a damp April morning in 1845. He was delivered to the Duper plantation, an estate known less for its crops and more for its silence. No singing in the fields, no laughter from the slave quarters. The overseers were reportedly quiet men. Church-going men, men who stared too long at the ground. When the boy stepped off the wagon, several witnesses later described the same impossible detail. He was beautiful in a way that defied context. Not pretty, not handsome, beautiful like a statue in a ruined temple. Skin untouched by sun, eyes too steady for someone in chains. One overseer refused to meet his gaze. Another crossed himself. The plantation owner, August Duper, a respected deacon in the church, reportedly whispered only one thing when he saw the boy: he should not be here. By sundown, 3 women on the estate claimed they heard singing coming from the cypress trees, but no one was there when they investigated. Just wet earth and the sound of something moving beneath the roots. St. Ignatius Chapel sat 2 miles from the Duper plantation. Every Sunday, white families filled the pews on the left. Enslaved men and women were forced to sit on hard benches in the back. But on the first Sunday after the boy arrived, something changed. The priest, Father Calloway, canceled communion without explanation. He told the congregation that God had instructed him in a dream to keep the doors locked from the inside. People laughed nervously, some obeyed, others were confused. Yet when the hour for Mass came, the iron doors of the chapel would not open, not from outside, not from inside. Men pulled on them until their hands bled. No one saw Father Calloway exit. When the doors finally swung open hours later, he was gone. Inside the chapel, on the altar, lay only a small pool of dark water and muddy footprints leading nowhere. One former slave, interviewed decades later as an old man, whispered something to a historian before his death. "He came into that church barefoot. I saw him, the beautiful one. He touched the floor and the floor cried out." From that day forward, the enslaved community began calling the boy by another name, the silent one, the beautiful curse. Within weeks, strange things began to follow the wealthiest families of Baton Rouge. Infants screaming for hours at empty corners of rooms, mirrors cracking without being touched, husbands waking in the night speaking in a childlike voice that was not their own. One woman, Celeste Morrow, wrote in her personal journal, later recovered in a burned-out house, "I saw him standing in the magnolia garden, though I know he was not permitted there. He looked at me not as property, but as if I were the one owned. I tried to move, but my body would not obey me. And then my dead brother spoke from behind his eyes. The doctors blamed hysteria. The priests blamed Satan. The enslavers blamed the enslaved. But terror moved like a quiet fog through the town, and at the center of it was always the same description. A young man, unchained, walking where he should not be able to walk, appearing in places no road led to, standing in doorways without opening them, and yet no one ever saw him eat. No one heard him speak above a whisper. He was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Then one morning, every child in a single household refused to open their eyes. They sat upright in their beds, still breathing, still alive, but unresponsive. On the wall of their bedroom, written in charcoal, were the words, "He remembers what you tried to forget." Just beyond the Mississippi stood a small Catholic orphanage run by 3 nuns, women known for their cruelty masked as discipline. They imprisoned abandoned children in prayer and silence, insisting suffering cleansed the soul. In May of that year, the youngest children began reporting the same figure standing by the river at night. A man, they said, who did not blink. A man whose reflection did not appear in the water. One girl, no older than 7, told the sisters he sang to them without opening his mouth, that the song made their ribs hurt, that it made them remember things that had never happened to them. When the sisters followed the children to the riverbank one dusk, they saw only muddy footprints, bare, human, but far, far too large for any child. Then they saw another set, smaller, children's feet, dozens of them, all facing the water, none leading back. The youngest nun collapsed in prayer, claiming God was testing them. The oldest one whispered a different thought. That is not God. That is remembrance. And for the first time, people began to question something far more dangerous than a haunting. What if this boy was not creating the horror? What if he was only revealing it? An elderly midwife, blind for years, was brought before the plantation owner by desperate townspeople. They said she had knowledge older than the town itself. When she felt the young man's face with her trembling hands, her mouth went dry. "I have touched him before," she said. "You are mistaken," Duper replied. "No," she whispered, tears spilling from her clouded eyes. "Not him, his blood in another time, another body. He is returning through flesh." She claimed that Baton Rouge was once sacred ground long before churches and plantations, that rituals were performed where the Duper mansion stood, that something had been asked for and something terrible had answered, and that every generation the answer tried to return. Some come as storms, some as sickness, and some, she added slowly, return as beauty, so they are allowed to get close. That night, for the first time, the young man was locked in an underground cellar. By morning, the mirrors in the Duper house dripped black, and the cellar was empty. 2 miles east of Baton Rouge stood a stone seminary that trained young men for the priesthood. It was also used unofficially as a place to send anything the church did not wish to name. The difficult, the unexplainable, the unholy. Late one night, a farmer rode to the gates in panic. He swore he had seen the strange young man kneeling in the field beside a dead cow, not feeding, not harming, only listening to the earth as if it were speaking to him. He said the ground trembled as the boy touched it. 3 priests and a seminarian were sent out. They found him sitting in perfect stillness, no chains, no rope, no sign of anyone guarding him. "Who are you?" one priest demanded. The young man looked up slowly. His eyes were neither afraid nor defiant. They looked ancient, like something that had watched centuries peel by as easily as bark falling from a tree. "I am what remains," he answered. It was the first time anyone had recorded his voice. They took him to the seminary, claiming they were saving his soul. But the old brick building did not swallow him. It reacted to him. Candles flickered when he passed. Wood creaked as if retreating from his presence, and every bell rang a half-second too late when he touched the ropes. A young seminarian named Thomas later wrote in a private letter, "We brought him here as if we were the captors, but I feel in my gut we have been brought here to him, like he is the altar and we are the offering." By the 3rd night, no one wished to sleep in the same wing of the building. And by the 4th, the prayers began to change. At midnight, the seminary was supposed to be silent. Yet the novices began to hear a low, humming chant rising through the floorboards. Not English, not Latin. Something buried in the bones of the land itself. They followed the sound to the underground prayer room, where centuries of dust layered the stone like forgotten snow. There they found the young man kneeling at the center. A circle had formed around him, not drawn, simply present. The air inside it felt thick, like breathing through wet cloth. "Who taught you this?" Father Remai asked. "No one," the young man replied. "You unlearned it?" I remembered. Then the stone walls answered him. Hairline cracks split through carvings of saints. The face of Christ on a crucifix seemed to twist in agony or recognition or both. One novice screamed that something beneath the floor was moving, like a giant heartbeat. When they tried to drag him away, they discovered they could not touch him. Their hands went numb inches from his skin, as if pushing against unseen glass. That is when Father Remai understood. This was not possession. This was presence. The young man was not channeling something. He was the channel, and whatever spoke through him did not come from above. It came from what had been forced under land, under bodies, under history, under lies. That night, one priest went mad and clawed scripture from the walls. Another smashed his own teeth against the altar stone to stop himself from reciting something that was entering his mind. Before dawn, the boy was gone again, but the prayer he had awakened would never leave the building. 3 days after his disappearance, a leather-bound diary was discovered in the seminary's oldest desk. No one admitted to owning it. The ink within was still wet. Each page contained events that had not yet happened, names, deaths, memories that did not belong to the men reading them. A sentence repeated again and again throughout the pages. Beauty is the mask of truth when truth is too terrible to face. Men who read more than 3 pages began to shake. Their eyes reddened. Some collapsed into fits of weeping so violent blood vessels burst around their corneas. One line, written larger than the rest, caused 6 men to fall to their knees. He was never meant to be a slave. Under that line was something even worse. You were. When word reached the Duper family about the diary, August demanded it be burned. But when they tried to light it, the flame died, not smoked, not hissed. It simply retreated as if recognizing the futility of its attempt. That same night, the river swelled beyond natural explanation, carrying uprooted crosses, broken pews, and animal carcasses past the plantations. And moving against the current, walking calmly along the surface of the Mississippi, was the young man, not sinking, not struggling, simply walking, watching the town, remembering them. Every old church has a place they never speak about. A hidden chamber where certain confessions go not to God, but to silence. Beneath St. Ignatius, behind the altar, behind the stone, beyond the priest's locked door, there was a forgotten vault. Inside it lay letters written by men who had ruled Baton Rouge from its beginning. Plantation owners, preachers, judges, all confessing the same original sin, a gathering that took place long before 1845, before official records, before even the name Baton Rouge was written in ink. They had taken a young native boy, said to be touched by visions, and forced him through a ritual meant to bring prosperity to the land. They bled him into the soil. They prayed over him in a twisted language borrowed from missionaries and stolen from tribes. They buried him alive to feed the future, and according to the oldest document, before the earth closed over his mouth, he smiled, not in surrender, in recognition. I am not the sacrifice, he had said. I am the gate. The men sealed the vault, built churches on top of it, raised families, spoke of God, owned slaves, but the land never forgot. And in 1845, it decided to answer. Children don't understand history, but they carry it more purely than anyone. Within weeks, the children of Baton Rouge began to dream the same dream, a dirt-walled pit, suffocating darkness, human hands pressing from above, a humming song beneath their ribs. They awoke with soil on their palms, roots tangled in their hair, bloody fingernails from scraping at nothing, and each one whispered the same sentence. He is trying to wake up inside us. Some parents tried to beat the visions out of them. Some prayed over them. Some abandoned them to the woods in religious panic. But a truth does not disappear because it is ignored. It multiplies. They began drawing pictures of the same face, the same eyes, the same impossible beauty, and beneath the pictures again and again were the same words, He is us. On the night of June 13th, 1845, the young man returned to the Duper plantation for the final time. But he did not come as a prisoner. He walked the grounds like an owner returning home after a long journey. Every step weighted with memory, every breath filled with the ancestors of the soil. August Duper stood on the balcony, trembling, gun in hand. You are property, he shouted, though his voice betrayed him. The young man looked up. No, he answered gently, I am the payment. The trees bent inward, the air collapsed. The house remembered every cry, every chain, every prayer that had been a lie told upward while cruelty was committed downward, and the ground began to open, not violently, not dramatically, slowly, as if yawning after centuries of sleep. No one knows exactly what happened inside that opened earth. Only fragments survived, screams choking into song, prayers being swallowed by deeper words, men clawing at grass as if dragged by invisible hands. Witnesses from the road said they saw light beneath the soil, not fire, something older, something pale and breathing. In the center of it all stood the young man, finally visible in his true form, not slave, not boy, not ghost, but memory made flesh. He had the faces of thousands layered behind his own, the eyes of every silenced voice that had sunk into the land, and when he spoke, the earth answered him like a child to a parent. I was planted, I grew, now I harvest, and the ground accepted its due. By morning, the duper plantation was simply gone. No rubble, no fire marks, no broken beams, only an empty, perfectly circular field of untouched grass, glistening with dew. At its center lay one object, the original plantation ledger, the same one that once had the words, "He is not a man," scrawled in blood. Now it was clean. On the first page were 4 new words, written in calm handwriting. "You remember now." Every member of the Duper family was erased from record. No graves, no obituaries, only whispers that drifted through the next generations. But the air no longer felt cursed. It felt settled. Baton Rouge carried on. Buildings rose, streets filled. Children were born with no knowledge of what once walked among them. But older folks never spoke of the land where the Duper plantation had been. They left it wild, untouched. Some nights, people claimed they saw a figure near the trees, watching over the ground, peaceful now. No chains, no sorrow, only calm. And if you listened closely, the wind through the branches almost sounded like singing. In 1899, an elderly priest left behind a final sermon never delivered from the pulpit. If he ever returns again, it will not be in anger. It will be to see whether we learned, and God help us if we did not. Section 16. The sealed test in 1911, when men tried to build on the land, their tools rusted overnight. Their horses refused to step on the soil. One man claimed he heard soft breathing beneath his feet and fled screaming into the river. The land rejected violence forevermore. Even into the early 1900s, some families passed down a quiet warning to their children. Be kind to the earth. Honor the forgotten. Respect the beauty of sorrow, or he will bloom again. In 1947, a woman walking at dawn reported seeing a barefoot man standing in the field. His appearance was unchanged, still young, still impossibly serene. She asked him, "Who are you?" He smiled, "I am what you buried and what you must never bury again." Then he vanished, leaving only warm footprints in the cold grass. No textbook carries his story. No plaque marks the field. No official word confirms his existence. But in the soil beneath Baton Rouge lies a myth that never stopped breathing. And beautiful things are not always meant to be owned. If you ever find yourself alone in Louisiana, standing on land where nothing grows except silence, listen closely. You might hear it, a song under the ground. Not of ghosts, not of demons, but of the impossible secret of a forgotten being who refused to die quietly, and who made the world remember